Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Sean, what is on your mind today?
I cannot shake what's on my mind today. It has been on my mind for many, many months. Kyle, you know that I love going on cruises.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Well, I've got one coming up. And although this, we're recording right now, in this very moment, we're a few weeks away. However, as this episode becomes available for our millions of listeners to consume, I am days away from flying to Orlando and getting on another cruise. However, the first time I've done a cruise back to back.
Okay.
So I'm doing two 7-day itineraries, but I'm not getting off the boat. We're going to stay on and do it again.
The same boat?
Yeah, same boat. However, a slightly different route. So the itinerary, the port, it's going to be a different order. But 2 weeks, I've never done that. But beyond that, I don't know the last time I took 2 weeks off for the sake of vacation. If I look back at my work calendar, I take time off all the time. But usually it's, India. It's a film thing. It's a conference that we're involved in. It's all these different elements that, are a little bit fun and cool outside of my day job. But it's not vacation.
Yeah, vacation is like no agenda, just relax.
And that is exactly what I'm about to do. The only bummer about this vacation is the very beginning. Bro, my flight takes off at 5 a.m. That means we board at 4:30, which means I probably need to be there at 3:30. Which means I'm leaving my apartment by 3:15, which also means I'm awake by 2:30. So that part's going to be a little rough. Really. But beyond that, I'm starting a 2-week vacation this week, and I cannot wait.
That is like unheard of.
Yeah.
I feel like you could make friends on a 2-week vacation and become like pretty good friends by the end, right?
Yeah, true.
So you say it's basically 2 different itineraries. Are there other people who will be on the boat for 2 weeks also?
There's generally a small group of people that do that. So I expect that there are others. I think the last time my friend that I cruised with, Sheila, she did something like this similar a few months ago. And there were like 40 other people that stayed on. So it's a thing, but it'll be my first time, and I'm pretty stoked about it.
Is anyone else going with you, or
just,
are you just
Sheila and myself?
Okay,
my main cruise buddy.
Of course. Cool. Sounds like fun.
I cannot wait. So just know, my head, my mind, my mental space and energy is already there.
Yep, I can understand.
Well, today's guest is pretty special, not just because of her incredible advocacy over the last couple decades, but also because of her friendship. Debbie Drell is somebody we have both known and been connected to for a long time now. Her dedication to the rare disease community is deeply personal. Inspired by her older sister Alex's diagnosis of pulmonary hypertension, she has channeled her passion into making a difference for others facing similar challenges. A lifelong learner, Debbie is a graduate of the University of California, Irvine, and is set to complete a Master of Public Health at the George Washington University Milken Institute this fall, 2026. Please enjoy our conversation with Debbie, a dear friend and fellow advocate.
Debbie, thanks so much for joining us today on the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We've known each other for a long time because of your work at Nord. So many things see you here and there in the rare disease community. One time we crashed your dinner party with a bunch of friends at a rare disease week. Oh, I think Sean was there too, right?
That's how we met. I didn't know Debbie until we crashed her dinner party.
Yeah. So it's been a whole lot of fun. We're so glad to talk to you today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hi, Sean. And this is a great honor. I've been working in rare diseases since my sister was diagnosed, so 20 plus years, almost 30 years as her caregiver. And what an honor. I've known your podcast from the beginning. I've listened to every episode. So thank you. Thank you so much. I feel really honored. I can't believe it, like me. I've been a big fan of this podcast. And yeah, thanks for crashing the Nord party in 2017. Thank you for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here.
I've been so looking forward to this. And, over the years, every time we're at an event or a dinner or an occasion where we all happen to be in the same place, you are always a good time. Your energy, your personality, you're the life of the party. And I think anybody that knows you would agree. So I've been looking forward to having you on the show. Thanks so much for being on here today. We know that you've been in this space for a long time with your vocation, your career choices. But as you mentioned, your sister is really probably what pushed you into the rare disease space because of her diagnosis. And we know that you have some chronic illness yourself. So you are an incredible candidate. A, because we like you, but B, you've got a lot of experience being able to talk to caregiving, invisible conditions, chronic illness, all things of the sort. So can you give our listeners a little reference as to why we are having you on the show right now, besides the fact that we think you're a pretty cool person?
Oh, I love that you think I'm cool because I think you guys the feeling is mutual. My sister Alex is 7 years older than me. And I have other siblings, but we grew up and became best friends. Then she got diagnosed with a rare disease that they told her she wouldn't live for 2 years. Like she had 2-year life sentence. They said, you have 2 years. You're not going to live to see your 30th birthday. But she's still alive. And that was a long time ago.
Wow.
25 years ago, I think. She has 5 rare conditions now, but it's the life-threatening, life-shortening, disabling condition called pulmonary hypertension that was what compelled me to start working in rare disease nonprofit organizations. And so she's my big sister. I've been her primary caregiver for many years. We've lived together for many years. She inspired me, and I'm motivated by my love for her to continue to work on patient advocacy. And for 14 years, I was really privileged to be a full-time staff member at her association dedicated to her disease. So it's called the Pulmonary Hypertension Association. And then I did patient engagement and community building. I worked with support groups and volunteers, and it helped me understand not only her disease and the challenges, but the value of community. And so her journey has shaped so much of who I am, and I'm really grateful to share her story here.
Debbie, can you tell us just briefly about pulmonary hypertension, just to give everyone a little foundation about what your sister goes through on a daily basis?
Yeah, so it's an invisible condition. It's cardio and pulmonary related. I won't go into the science of it, but the lining in the pulmonary artery, people think that it's like general hypertension, but it's very specific place in the organ system, the pulmonary system. So the endothelial lining of the pulmonary artery that leads to the heart gets tighter and tighter, and the flow of blood that needs to get oxygen is slowed down. It's so the heart has to work hard to pump the blood through the artery to get oxygen. So the symptoms are shortness of breath, difficulty breathing. Like when you run and you're done running, or if you do something physically like very tough and you're out of breath, she feels like that every day, like doing nothing. Like her heart is overworking all the time. And it is life-threatening, life-shortening, and disabling. She has to be on oxygen. Some people require a wheelchair just because they can't walk. They don't have the physical ability. It's too much exertion for
Wow.
the individual. So it's invisible in the sense that a lot of people, they don't look sick, and they, if unless they're wearing oxygen, you wouldn't know that they have this illness. It's all internal into the heart and lung.
Wow. I haven't had the privilege of meeting Alex, but hearing your stories and knowing what you've shared about her and with her just over the last 9 years that I've known you, I know she's a pretty powerful individual, and I'm grateful for her sake and your family's sake that 25 years later, she's still doing her thing.
Thank you.
I want to back up. Let's go back to 25 years ago or whatever it may be. Dealing with invisible or chronic illness, I imagine it's a different world. In my journey with the FA, especially before I started using a walker or a wheelchair, I had people assume I was drunk. I didn't look normal, or things didn't look the way most people think it should look. So, can you talk to a time or tell us a story about how maybe your sister's invisible illnesses had an impact on the day, and maybe people around you had no idea or didn't see it?
That's a great question. Yeah. So last December, Alex and I went to a Duran Duran concert, and it was my Christmas gift to her. And also because of the nature of her disease, that it's life-threatening, I always try to do bucket list memories with her. So things that, she wants to do just to live her best, biggest life. And we've both been hardcore Duranis since childhood. I know I don't look or act that old, but I was an infant. I was just a little baby. But she was older, and so she was hardcore Duran. I love Duran Duran. So anyway, we went. I flew from DC to California, spent the Christmas with them. My sister and family that are all out there. And then she drove us 2 hours to the concert because it was not near her home. And by the time we arrived, she was completely wiped out just from driving. She was hungry. We went for sushi. And after the meal, she said, I'm crashing. I'm crashing really hard. I need sleep. Well, I could have gone from the sushi restaurant to the hotel, but there was a vegan grocery store nearby because it's California. And I was like, please let me go to this place, and she said, fine. She sat in the car. It took me more than 5 minutes. It took me about 20 minutes. When I got back, she looked pale, and I had to rush her to the hotel room to get her on oxygen and let her rest. And she said something that kind of broke my heart. She said, I might need to rest and miss the concert. Just because she really doesn't have a lot of energy. And this was her gift and her moment, and I didn't really take seriously or realize just how exhausted she was. And after 3 hours of rest, and she slept, we had made enough time in the day, but she slept with oxygen for 3 hours. She managed to rally, and we got to the concert. But that uncertainty, sort of could have ruined this moment that I was, I don't think selfishly wanted to go to the vegan place. Just I didn't realize like just how tired she was. So I don't spend a lot of time with her. She's on the West Coast now, but I forgot, that when she says she's tired, I need to really take it seriously and go get her on oxygen.
Yeah, you flew out all the way there. You stayed a few days and made this big thing, right? And then just because of your misjudgment of the situation, it was almost, for nothing. And I have a feeling that situation might be common with invisible illnesses, right? Where somebody just doesn't quite make the connection, and, it can change a lot of things.
Yeah. And it would have been really sad because I would have gone to Duran Duran without her.
And then had all these stories and
And
photos.
would have had all these photos, and she just would have been home
She would have
crying.
been napping.
She would have been sleeping. Yeah.
So, Debbie, what is you said you just forgot, and that Duran Duran concert was a year ago and some odd months. It wasn't 25 years ago when this was all new. So, speaking of that, are there things that maybe you feel like you've learned over time to help you better understand or maybe better remember what Alex is up against on a daily basis?
What did I learn? I mean, I learned to notice small clues about her physiology. So, for example, when she's out of breath, I can see her like struggling. I can see her lips turn a little blue. Like I can see like the invisible disease when it's really pronounced is very visible. But I also think slowing myself down because you guys call me the life of the party. I love that. I I was called by my boss at Nord, the cruise director. My speed my speed is too fast for her. Like it is, and I'm a hyper person. It's way too fast for her. I walk fast, I talk fast, I move fast. I have to slow. I have to be really intentional and slow down for her.
Mm.
And I usually do that. I'm usually very much aware. But I think because I hadn't seen her in months, I just sort of forgot. But yeah, I think trying to put myself in her shoes, trying to remember because you take for granted when you're sitting with somebody who isn't manifesting physical symptoms, you sort of take for granted that they have the illness. And then all of a sudden, I'm walking and I look and she's like way behind me because she can't keep up.
Yeah. What is something you've learned about her specifically that she might need in order to get through a day with you
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
day in general?
Yeah. Even if she were with somebody that wasn't hyperactive or moved around too fast, like with anybody, she needs a midday nap
Mm.
every day for 1 to 2 hours. And when she's especially fatigued, her nap could stretch 2.5 to 3 hours. Like, she needs to sleep, and this started 10 years ago when she was living with me in Silver Spring, Maryland, on the East Coast. Her condition impacts even the simplest activities, even sitting in a car. That was the other thing on our, trip, to, see Duran was that she sat in the car for 2 hours, and that was still, like, exertion for her.
Mm.
So to get her through a regular day, she's gotta nap, she's gotta take breaks, she can't work, she can't take road trips, and she barely leaves the house except for her family duties because she's 57 years old and she's 56 years old and raises a 9-year-old granddaughter with my mom. So, like, she really can't do anything except for sort of the bare minimum of caretaking for her granddaughter. But the napping every day is it's mandatory.
Wow. That alone, I'm sure, has an impact on life. Like, I feel like I barely have time to make dinner or sit down and edit the show to feel like I can lay down for a couple hours or not even just feel like I can, but feel like I need to. Uh, there's got to be some pressure to, I'm sure I would imagine at this stage of life she's come to realize what she needs, but also there's probably some wrestling with, am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to put myself first? So speaking of that, Debbie, could you talk to maybe some of the misconceptions that are out there, whether it be with Alex specifically or just in your work in the rare disease field? I imagine those of us with real conditions that are maybe somewhat hard to see or totally invisible, there's lots of misconceptions. Can you speak to any of them that you've noticed or that Alex has dealt with?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And there is a community of people that are identified as being in the invisible illness community, and it overlaps with rare a lot. Um, and the drill that you get when you have an invisible illness is you don't look sick, you're fine. And it's really frustrating. And when Alex was first diagnosed, it was a dark emotional time. She lived in a small town in Texas when she was diagnosed, population 4,000. And she was at a Walmart during the early years of her disease, and someone accused her of faking her illness. They said, "You're not sick enough to need a handicap placard." And they accused her of stealing someone else's handicap placard because she had one. And so at the time, she was on a treatment that was an IV line going into her chest 24/7. And she had enough. She was like tired. She was on her last thread. So she showed the woman the port on her chest. She like pulled her shirt down and showed her the port and said, "Am I sick enough now?" And to the credit of the woman, she apologized, but
Mm.
it wasn't about, you know, ignorance necessarily, because I think people just don't understand that you can look normal in quotes, but be sick. It's really the reminder of people who are living with an invisible illness, the kind of strength that you need to sort of advocate for yourself in a world that really doesn't always get it. And she literally does not have the energy to constantly explain herself to strangers.
Mm.
I think it's a reminder to take a beat and reconsider. Like, I get really frustrated when I see what I assume to be an able-bodied person in the handicap space, right? And I need to park. I need to get my ramp out. And every time I see that, my blood starts to boil and I get furious. But then I have to remind myself, you know what? Maybe there's something going on here that I don't know about. Like, maybe there's something that I don't know. I have to calm my ego for a second. And I think it's a healthy thing to do, to like take a second, be like, I don't know everything. Like, there's probably something going on here that I don't know about, and I should give this person a little grace.
Yeah, I've learned that, especially talking about the handicap placard. I've done it myself. I forget to put it in the window, and I go into a restaurant or into Starbucks, and I come back, and I realize, oh, there's nothing about my car that indicates I'm allowed to park here. And when I have seen that, and I think, able-bodied person take advantage of the system. But really, I've learned that maybe they just forgot to hang up their placard. So I feel like over the last few years anyway, I've become a little more gracious myself. But Debbie, I'm curious, it's probably one thing, like you said, your sister just exhausted and tired of defending herself, right? I'm wondering about you. For many years you were her caregiver. You guys lived together. You were involved on a daily basis in what she was up against. So how do you respond when somebody says something to that effect of, oh, they don't look sick enough?
Yeah. Um, in the early days, I would respond with anger.
Yeah.
To be very honest, you know, I'd get really mad on her behalf, and she never wanted me to be angry. It's a really honest question, and you know, people who never think about what it's like to live with an invisible condition, you know, I don't blame them anymore.
Mm.
Someone like Alex, her body's working overtime. They have no idea that her heart acts like it's running a marathon, even if she's sitting still. They don't know. So when I talk about when that happens, I will actually say something like, "Do you have a minute to hear about my sister and her condition? Can I tell you a little bit about pulmonary hypertension?" Um, and usually they run away.
Hey, it's always worth a try, though, I guess.
Yeah.
"Can I talk to you about my sister's rare disease?" "Oh, I don't know." Like people are busy. And maybe that happened because it was Christmas time. You know how it is in parking lots there. People just want to throw their fist in the air. They don't want to listen. But it's an opportunity. It's a teachable moment, I think.
Mm.
And if one person hears it who knows how far the ripple effect will go? And 1 in 10 people live with rare diseases, so 9 out of 10, uh, you might be their first exposure. So
Sure.
the moment of awareness can lead to more compassion if, people are able to hear and learn more. Alex says, "You don't see my diseased lungs or my enlarged heart. You don't see me on my bad days," because she doesn't get out of the house on her bad days. But she tells them, "What I have is very real." And, people listen when she's speaking. When I'm
Sure.
speaking and I'm angry, not really.
Yeah, it can be hard, right, for strangers to respond to anger with grace. Like that doesn't happen very often.
Well, and I can see how that could be exhausting. Like
Yeah.
every time you go somewhere, having to defend I mean, it doesn't sound like she's defensive, but having to explain yourself is an exhausting thing, I think.
Yeah.
It's not fun, and nobody should have to do it, right? Or do any of us,
Yeah.
whether it's
Yeah.
our color of skin, our politics, our disease, our why nobody should have to explain themselves, right? I totally get that.
Mhm.
Debbie, what is something you wish people understood about the difference between somebody looking fine and actually being okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the old expression, "Don't judge a book by its cover," comes to mind because on the surface, Alex might seem okay, but people need to adjust their expectations. So once we tell family or friends, like, she has this rare disease, you can't really see it, but she can't climb stairs, she can't walk up a hill, even the slightest incline, it affects her. She can't walk for more than 2 blocks, she has to pause and take a breath. She cannot spend an entire day outside, so her okay looks different from what most people might assume, and one of the things that is really heartbreaking is when I hear my sister say this, sort of like blaming herself, but she says that, "It's not my fault. I didn't ask for this disease." So she not only has to manage her physical and emotional toll of having this disease, but then she has to spend precious energy emotionally defending herself to others. It's a constant battle explaining her limitations and pushing back against judgment or misunderstanding. And it's moments like these that remind me how important it is to be empathetic and to resist making assumptions about what someone is going through based on appearance alone.
Sure. We all have experience with those judgmental interactions in the parking lot, you know, at the mall, at the grocery store, etc. Can you share an example of when empathy made a positive impact on you or Alex or maybe the whole family when the symptom or the concern, they weren't necessarily obvious, but somebody said, "Tell me more," or "Let's look into that." Like they took it seriously and they tried to expand their own exposure to what you and your sister were up against.
Yeah. Well, what's common about rare diseases is that there's a lot of misdiagnoses and a lot of physicians who are telling you it's something else. And you just keep hearing again and again, it's something else, it's something else. And so the empathy that we got from one of the doctors, the most profound and positive impact, and I asked her this, and I know this to be true, is that one doctor who finally took her symptoms and really thought about it beyond what was, you know, other common diseases. Like, she was told it was stress. She was told she needed to lose weight. She was told it was mental illness. She was put on Prozac. She had inhalers. They told her to exercise. It made her worse. And so this doctor changed everything. He said, "This is not in your head. This is in your heart." And he recognized the condition because he encountered someone else with her disease, pulmonary hypertension, in this small town. So it's kind of a weird miracle that there were 2 zebras in a town, and she had PH associated with another condition. And that moment of understanding and validation was very life changing for her. A more recent example is at the Duran Duran concert. I love talking about. It's such a great show. The arena offered wheelchairs as part of their concierge service. And the staff were incredibly kind and responsive. They didn't ask her what she had. They didn't ask to see any papers. They didn't ask questions. They didn't make her feel like she had to justify the wheelchair. And they asked, can we help push her? Um, that small act of compassion made a huge difference in the concert. And then something that sort of brought me to tears was in the summer of 1997, which was when she was actually finally diagnosed, or before she was diagnosed. She passed out frequently, and she told me that she had a grand mal seizure, so she lost control of all of her body in front of me, and I was I was 21, and she like I had no idea what was going on, but I said to her, "You have to go to the hospital right now." And I got her husband, he was actually dismissive on her symptoms. And I said, "She needs to go to the hospital right now." And my belief in her, she said, made the difference in her getting the diagnosis. It was the last seizure. And the doctors actually said, "We don't know how you were living with your heart this enlarged, with you this advanced with the disease." So she could have died. People die, the family learns they had PH after their death. So it was a very critical moment. So all of these moments in time sort of show how empathy can be life changing on a grand scale, and then also life changing on these bucket list
For
moments.
sure.
Wow. Yeah, life-saving. Holy cow. Just the validation. Like I don't know, you don't think of that as a life-saving thing, but it can be in a case like this where she understands that people believe her, that it's not her fault, and that can be life-saving. I think that's pretty remarkable.
Debbie, is there anything about Alex's condition that has affected your relationship with her?
Yeah. So when she was diagnosed, I was already close with her, but somehow we got even closer.
Mm.
Um, so after, so she was diagnosed, she was still married. Her husband divorced her, and she lived with me for 5 years. And during that time, I even had temporary custody of one of her daughters. I helped her navigate insurance and federal programs and resources, and it's been a journey to say the least, the amount of work it takes to manage this rare disease and all the other four that came along. So we got really close, just like living together and in through caregiving. But we've also had some pretty memorable moments, like the Duran Duran concert last December. There was a Duran Duran concert maybe 10 years ago where we snuck backstage and got to a point where she couldn't get close to where the band was because of the flight of stairs and her wheelchair.
Mm.
And so that moment, she was just like, "Thanks for getting me. This is as far as we could get." She was so grateful. She's like, "Thanks so much for getting me here. Too bad. It's okay." And I wasn't mad that she was in the wheel. Like, I wasn't mad that we couldn't go further because she couldn't climb the stairs. I was like, "It's okay." And somebody walked by and said, "Who do you want to meet?" And she was tongue-tied. And I said, "John Taylor," because I knew that was her favorite. And he came down the stairs.
No
He
way.
came down the stairs and gave us autographs. We took pictures. Like, it was such a great moment. But at that moment, you sort of just you try. That was another bucket list concert, like going to see them in Texas. So it's really nice.
Lots of Duran Duran stories. You guys are like the super fans of super fans.
It's a big part of our childhood, and
Yeah.
they're still churning out music. I love them, and yeah, she loves them. It's great. It's sort of one of our things we bond over.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have a connection like that.
No, Debbie, obviously we talk about how Alex's conditions and diagnoses kind of probably pushed you into the world of vocational work in the rare disease space. But I'm curious, on a personal level, how does it influence the way you interact with others, whether it's friends, other family members, colleagues, people you meet in the airport randomly? How do you think that's caused you to, I don't know, see the world?
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, it was incredibly frustrating when family members didn't understand the disease. And it's especially frustrating now after all of these years.
Mm.
But because it's invisible, they forget she's sick. And I mean, I did that. Not that I forgot she's sick, but I didn't really rush to take her to get on oxygen. But family members get mad sometimes when she cancels plans at the last minute. They get mad when she doesn't pick up the phone because she's sleeping. And if maybe they get mad because they think she doesn't care, but they don't realize that it's just the reality of her condition. So, my interactions when in the early days of her diagnosis was that I spent a lot of time advocating for her. And even with we had like mutual friends when she lived with me, I had to tell them like, don't walk so fast and pick restaurants with that do not have stairs. We need elevators. Even 2 steps up is too much if she has to walk from the car to the restaurant. So things that don't cross their minds, I have to like advocate and remind them we need an elevator. We can't have a long distance. She's not coming on a hike with us. They didn't understand what she's dealing with. So my interactions have been more advocating. But over time, it sort of became less as they became accustomed to her disease.
Sure. In those situations, have you, it's one thing you said, it's kind of frustrating early on, but have you ever felt protective or maybe even helpless when others questioned or minimized Alex or your experience as her sister?
Yeah, yeah. I will admit, I do feel a little protective of her. She's my big sister, but she's actually shorter than me. And people think she's younger because she has like a cute little young face. Not to say that my face doesn't look cute or young, but people think she's younger. So it's just weird. It's just sort of a weird dynamic because I'm so much taller than her and I'm younger, but she doesn't care. I'm like little bossy. But I've gotten used to people not fully understanding her invisible rare disease. It's because we've lived with this reality for so long that the world just doesn't get it, and so I'm not fighting against the whole world every day. Like, you need to know, but,
Sure.
but there was a time, and so she, again, Duran, and maybe there's a connection because my initials are DD. This is the DD podcast. We're talking about Duran. So
Yep.
there you go.
All right.
But so again, she and I were at a Duran concert and she was in the wheelchair for the entire concert. And at one point, she stood up because it was one of her favorite songs. And she can stand up. She can stand up, she can walk. She doesn't have the cardio energy ability to move. But she stood up. And somebody nearby shouted, "Look at you!" And it was meant to be positive, but it came off patronizing and even a little passive aggressive. Like she was questioning, "Why are you in the wheelchair? You can stand." So that was irritating, and I felt protective, but I didn't, start a fight or anything. I didn't get in her face. But even within our family, this is really crazy. In our family, there have been challenges. So one year, one family member once told her, "Get over it." Like she needed us to slow down and they were like, "Just get over it." But then in sad irony, he was diagnosed with his own chronic physically disabling condition and it completely changed his perspective. And he became much more sensitive to her needs and struggles. So it's frustrating, but it's really hard to empathize sometimes if you haven't actually gone through it. So
Yeah.
people get, they are uncomfortable with her having an invisible disease or they have denial. Like no, she's not sick, but it just puts the burden on her that she has to defend herself or be extra aggressive or proactive in getting her needs met, which is, slow down or I can't do that.
Yeah. Like you say, it's difficult if you haven't gone through it, but it's so valuable. If you can express empathy and understand somebody, even in situations that you haven't been through, that is such a valuable thing in many different situations, not only chronic illness, but lots of stuff in life. So just to keep that in mind, I think all of us fall into that trap of, I don't know, maybe ego or maybe there's lots of traps that prevent us from empathy, but I think it's really valuable if you can get there.
Yeah.
Well, that is all for this one. We look forward to picking up the rest of the conversation for you in episode 298. If you're enjoying this show, please be sure to share it with a friend, like and subscribe so you never miss an episode, and keep your eyes peeled for 298. Until then, keep living with urgency.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.